Hi everyone, welcome to another day of exploring what happens next. I hope all of you are doing well. Um, I'm I'm Shraddha Jadhav and I work with SNS Arts Development Consultancy as a project development consultant from Mumbai. Um, and I'm I'm very excited to be a part of this second series where we are talking to guests from all over the world. Um, I hope you've had a chance to look at the videos, the conversations that came in earlier, and I hope you've had a chance to share them across with people that you think would love to look at it. Let me also take a chance to then tell you about our guest for today and to invite her. Our guest for today is a cultural professional from Mumbai. So I worked in the museum and gallery space for a while as well, and personally I regard her as an idol in that space. She is a curator and a director of Ekaa archiving resources, and she has worked across India on prestigious heritage projects. Like Kalakshetra in Chennai, Udaipur's City Palace. One of her recent books on the Nizam jewels is also something that you might know about if you check out her page on Instagram. So join me to welcome Deepthi Sasidharan. Just give me a moment and I'll just add her to this right now.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Deepthi. How have you been?
Good. I've been good.
How's Ekaa doing, and how's your team doing?
We're doing well. Lockdown like everyone else, but yeah, we're doing well.
Great. I'm really loving the kind of Instagram stories and posts that your page has been doing, and also the kind of conversations that are coming on from the digital space. I just want to get into the question and ask you how have your projects that were planned for this year been like, and what are you doing? I know the recent exhibition that you worked on was the Rizwan Razak Museum, the money exhibition. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was actually a full-fledged museum that mercifully we were able to open. I mean, nobody saw the lockdown and this pandemic coming, but we were able to open it in the middle of February, just before all of this sort of descended. And the museum's open to the public. It's called the Rizwan Razak Museum of Indian Paper Money. It's in Bangalore, heart of Bangalore. It was the culmination of almost 2.5 years of work. One man selection, and he had a very clear brief. He said, I needed to be world class. And an example of someone who worked very closely with the team. So we opened that in the middle of February. So it's open to the public. Hopefully, once all of this blows over, the people of Bangalore and travelers and visitors to Bangalore can go see it.
Yeah. Are they doing something digitally? Are they doing something digitally at this point?
Yeah, so it's interesting how some of the things that we had started doing initially kind of helped us. So when we were doing the museum, I wanted to do something tech. And Mr. Razak was very accepting and kind of enthusiastic about the idea. So we'd done a series of around 6-7 short films and a bunch of other things which are now slowly sort of being released to the public, talking about parts of the collection. It's also money is something that is there and concerns everyone, but no one quite knows what you carry in your pocket, right? So if you pull out a note, there's so much of history there. There's so much of knowledge there. It tells you so much about your country. All your national languages are in there. All your, economic important figures are in there. What we choose to put on the note is firmly in the space of art history. What did the British choose to put on their notes? So his collections basically of the subcontinent. And like I say with many other things, It's just that one object and the story that it tells that can tell you so much. So
That's
yeah,
right.
but to answer your question, we're doing a series of things. He had hoped to open the website a few weeks after the opening. That has gotten a little delayed because everyone is everywhere. But that will happen soon. And we're trying to see how we can sort of take it to the virtual space, because it's something everyone wants to know about as well. And we've done a series of talks with private people and things like that. Much like what other...
And they are up on the page.
Sorry?
Are they up on the page? Are they up on the Instagram page?
We've been circulating them. For example, a small interview talking about the collection that he had done got almost 1.3 lakh views. So, you know, I think there is space for those stories, or maybe everyone's just bored and sitting at home. I don't know, but yeah.
No, but they are very interesting and important stories. I think that's what a lot of museum institutions are doing at this point, using the digital space as much as they can. What do you think at this, from the crisis that we are in and at the crisis that has come on, especially on the looking at the heritage and art sector? There are lots of issues, major issues that are going to come up in terms of the space, in terms of audience. What do you think are the first few issues that the museum institutions need to deal with? And also you as an organization, as a curator, archivist, what are the things that you need to also, issues that you need to address first?
I think what we face in India is no different than what museums worldwide are and will face. So I think that the problems will remain the same. There are around 95,000 museums around the world, and the predictions are already out. I think the UNESCO report came out day before. The predictions are already out that 10% will perhaps never open again.
Yeah, I think Economic Times put up something where 13% museums will not open up.
Was that for India?
Yeah, that was overall.
Yeah, overall. So 10 to 15%, it's a fairly sensible estimate. I think many will close down temporarily and open in some other format, or may not open at all. So it's a grim scenario because, you know, the arts and museums and smaller museums particularly are at the fringe end of how sustainable they are. A lot of the ticket sales actually goes towards paying salaries, even if the other overheads are covered by other funds. So I think what would be the most important thing going forward for museums is basically in the immediate future, figure out how can we welcome people again. And we are no different than any other community space, any other public space. A lot of the senior management, both in the government as well as in the private sector, are also already joining hands together with other agencies to just figure out what is the basic, you know, public service that can, public service amenities that can be almost mandatory, I guess. And I think in terms of, you know, social distancing, in the museum, how far apart do visitors stand? Depending on the size of the museums, how many visitors can you let in? We've never had that scenario in India where, you know, people are killing each other to get inside a museum. Some few of them, but not
sometimes.
Yeah, but it's not a scenario like how you have, you know, the waiting queues in the big museums abroad.
Yeah.
So that might actually help. Nonetheless, it will now be the responsibility of the institutions to ensure that they have a good experience. The most severely impacted will be, and I think we are a shadow of the tourism sector, will be the groups that come in. Whether it's the tourists who come in or the education sector, the children who come in, right? They are all put everybody in a bus, 200 of them, take them to a museum, take them to a park. Schools for the foreseeable future will be shut, so that's a big slice of kids not coming in. Tourist groups, religious tourist groups, even, you know, domestic tourists from the rural parts of India would come to the city. So if you take CSMVS or you take IGM in Delhi or the National Museum in Delhi, you have all these tour group visitors who come in. That's
a
also
major
all going.
dependency on the tour group.
Yeah. So they'll all that's all going to sort of evaporate in the immediate future. People are going to be traveling less. All these restrictions of quarantine here, there. So I think they'll have to imagine very quickly how you can actually change audiences. I have a feeling audiences will become now more local. Museums will focus on people around, you know, in the sort of safe zone. So if a museum, maybe look at your own pin codes to bring in people. And people in turn, if they reciprocate, that might also help. Bombay.
That's actually interesting. Yeah. Because a lot of times the locals are the ones who have not been to their local museum, to their museum. And so a lot of people I know in Mumbai have not been to CSMVS. So it's,
so if
in
you
a way,
if you take the CSMVS pin code and you take all the people who live in, say, a 3 or 4 kilometer radius, you will find that they have perhaps, also because of the demographic, you will find that they have perhaps been to more museums abroad. It's just this traveling, you know, interested, the art interested crowd. Then they have been to CSMVS. While CSMVS in turn, I'm saying this purely on the basis of what I've seen, would have, I think, all had more domestic and international visitors. I think that will change, and for museums to remain sustainable and keep their head above the water, it will be very important to turn to local audiences and engage. Because that need will still continue, you know. Suppose schools are shut, museums may become the new spaces where at least some kind of an educational experience you might get, and learning. Remains to be seen. I can't predict.
But yeah, it looks like you're right. Audience is the first thing that we might have to start working on. And I'm sure Ekaa will also be very involved in kind of making that happen with a lot of these spaces. And I also was wondering, so you might know about the COVID Art Museum, you might be following pages like that. So the museum coming onto a digital space, what do you think about, what is your take on things like that, where it's actually a museum completely working on that, you're presenting things in a museum setup, or like, so just to give the audience a reference, COVID Art Museum is an Instagram page where art that is born during the COVID quarantine time is being shown, so or being presented. So what do you have to say about something like that?
I think it's great because people will search for COVID art, not really like kind of saying they think that kind of a thing, right? So they want to see what COVID art is. It's a space certainly which is kind of tracking what's happening. It's actually a nice page. It's not one of those random pages. I actually find it quite interesting, and they curate their content pretty well. But as we're in digital, I think we are all like, you know, enough zoomed out and IGTV'd out, and everybody has had enough of webinars and, you know, this kind of constant, literally what we are also doing, just this talking to kind of.
Now.
Yeah. So the past 2-3 months, the proportion of that engagement has certainly been very high, if not just the only thing. But it will go down and hold steady. I think the digital interface will continue. Many museums have been just plunged into it with like no digital activity or some intern handling it. Now suddenly the entire face of the museum,
they have to take on these tools,
it's
use
just
them.
This one Instagram account, or it's just this one person who's doing it. So that too will evolve rapidly, and in that sense, this disruption is great. It was one of my biggest laments that we would never have enough you know, engagements with the digital world, but I think everyone will engage digitally now. They are. And so they're also going back to their collections. Once the lockdown eases, I think a lot of the curator staff can go back and look at their collections anew. Also with the lesser visitors, I think there'll be time to actually look at the knowledge base. You know this well, but on a daily basis, there are just so many visitors coming to a museum or to a gallery space. And there are so many outreach and public faces events that have to be dealt with, whether it's paperwork, whether it's an event being done, an exhibition opening, a lecture that Yeah, it's just constant, and it's unrelenting for a small museum and for a big museum.
And especially museums and galleries working with very small teams. It's just
Very
sometimes
small
three,
teams.
four
It's like what, 3 people typically, right?
Yeah.
And small museums in India are like literally like you, me, and one more kind of. It's a 3 family.
Yeah, that's it.
4 people. And I think these teams have never had the opportunity to sit down, time not permitting, to look at collections, to see how collaborations could be possible. It's always suggested, it's always at the fringe end of, oh, if we had time, we could do some things like this. These plans will and have already been set into motion. I can speak for myself. We always discussed internally how we could share and discuss things. All of us work on different projects. We basically work as advisors and consultants. So within our small team itself, we have a great pool of information and knowledge, and we always used to talk about how, yes, we'll sit and talk about it. It'll happen over a hurried call or some phone call or coffee, and we're like, we should get the whole team together and talk about this. This would be so interesting. So when lockdown happened, I initiated it I said, listen, I'm not very sure if talking over various, social media channels will work, but amongst ourselves, let's start these sessions. And we did, and it was so enjoyable that we decided to share it with. So I don't know if you've attended any of them, but we have these knowledge share sessions with, just basically register and join. They're free. And it's been great because we've learned so much within our own team. And I give that as an example because I think that's also happening. We did it with like artists, where we are sitting, you have all the time in the world and no one can give you an excuse. Where are you? I know you're home, right?
Exactly.
So
you can't do that anymore.
You can't do that anymore. You can call, it'll always be, oh, I'm rushing home, I'm on a bus, I'm in a train, can I call you later? So none of that is happening.
So true.
And we're sitting and talking, and all the areas, so it's a time of really sitting down and taking a deep breath. It comes at a cost.
It's also great time to follow up and like work on that idea rather than like leaving it in the middle. Just actually taking it forward is something that's possible.
Now, and as with everything innovative, someone said, okay, now why don't we record this? So we've recorded it. And then someone said, now that we've recorded, let's just share it. It's us talking. There's no copyright. That's a great idea. Let's share it. And many learnings. For example, the last session that we did, my colleague Abhiruchi did a session on lesser known Marathi archives. And she was talking to me and she says, maybe I want to do it in Marathi. I said, what's stopping you? Go ahead, do it in Marathi. And it's been so appreciated because we have across India all these little pools of information, and to just presume that English will be the only gateway is a little silly. And if you think about it, all our exhibitions and all our museums in India are in English.
All of them,
And in the past 10-15 years, they've been made bilingual only in the state museums.
So Marathi in Maharashtra, there'll be Tamil in Chennai.
So if it's in Bombay, it'll be Marathi and English. If it is in Delhi, it'll be Hindi and this. If it's in Kerala, Malayalam and this. But then you just shut down, and always remember, pehle English aata hai, uski baad local language aata hai.
Pehle English and then followed by. That's also true for school.
Yeah, and translations, for those of us who worked in, we've always, from the beginning, researched on who could be a good translator, and as far as possible, follow up on that. But many don't have that luxury, unless there's somebody who knows both the languages. Luckily in India, I think almost everyone is at least bilingual or at least trilingual. So you find people easily who can at least look at a piece of text and say, yeah, this is on point. But I think now with, what the Prime Minister said, go local, will happen. It really will happen. You'll go local if all the people who are coming to your museum are from in and around your, your building. You very well speak the language that they speak. And that change and those conversations, I think, in the local language or local culture, I use that term loosely, will happen, You don't necessarily now have to serve sandwiches and coffee, right? You can do vada pav and little chai.
Of
So
course, yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
there are no international visitors for the next 2 years, so you can rest easy on that.
True. So I was also thinking, as an archivist, if what would you suggest an artist who is struggling at this time? Not struggling, but is in a crisis situation. Um, so what would you suggest in terms of maybe what are the things that they could do to use this time to the best? Whether they are performing artists or they are uh, painters and photographers and
Yeah,
artists.
so it's a really really tough time. I think as a community, if at all that exists, and I think almost all of us will know either artists or performing artists, theater performers, professionals
Hmm.
who are not literally on the stage, on the canvas, support staff, people like you and me who are part of the community. It's going to
Hmm.
be very tough for a lot of us, and many would have already switched to alternative careers or ways of just sort of getting by. The first bit of advice that I have been giving is perhaps to just reach out and speak to these people. You know, I don't think we've been even doing that in the absence of any kind of Museum Society of India or any Archivist Society of India, either on a local or national basis that's, you know, very vibrant. It's good to reach out to your colleagues, people whom you work with, and first of all, ask how they are doing, and you may be well
Right.
in a position to solve a problem that they are going through if you help them. So that's the first bit of advice. But on
Hmm.
another note, remember, many of them will possibly be looking at no jobs, either for the rest of this year or for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future. This is because performing arts artists, performing arts dancers, I mean, I'm already seeing sort of little appeals of help that are going, and they're sort of being amplified. Where 10
Yeah.
dancers come together and put a performance. If there is not going to be a theater available, if there are not going to be spaces where they can practice together, it means their
Hmm.
livelihoods are in a spot of trouble, right?
Yeah.
And while we can't, and many of us will not be able to help them in that sense, in an employment sense, I think this is a great time to answer the first bit of your question as an archivist, that we can channel them definitely to look and talk about their work. Artists, dancers especially, and theater artists almost never have time to sit and talk about their work. The one or two people who are very, sort of erudite and are used to speaking or are at the very top do that. But for most
Hmm.
of them, there is almost never time to either think about their work, more for them than for us, because their kind of life on the stage is kind of a limited set, and rehearsals, they work so hard, they're like athletes in that sense. The few
Yeah.
dancers that I know, singers that I know, it's such a disciplined, focused life that they have, and of course traveling tours and studios and this and that. It would be a great time, also because our country desperately needs it, to perhaps start the seed of documenting their stories and their craft and their art. As archivists, I would love
Definitely.
to, conversations like this, record it, and start artist archives. I've
Hmm.
spoken about this many times, and some of my artist friends are already looking at that. But perhaps advise them that if I'm sharing my story as recording, how should I record it? What are the best sort of digital standards in which to record it? Where could my
Right.
interviews perhaps be kept in a way that it is accessible? What is my form of
Hmm.
dance that I follow? What is the costume that I wear? What inspired me? How have I evolved? All of these questions are just general information that later could be of great use to researchers, maybe, I don't know, um, students of that subject. We have a
Right.
great paucity of archives in our country. You know this better than if
Hmm.
I'm actually
Yes.
better off researching 19th and late early 20th than if I'm looking for, like, who were the dancers in my country between 1970 and 1980. Okay,
True.
where do I go? Who do I contact? The dancers who are very
Where do
old
you
are
start?
very, very
Yeah.
old. The dancers who are
Hmm.
dancing are like, we are dancing, don't disturb us. Uh, so I think this would be a great time to reach out. If you're an archivist or a professional researcher, now would be a good time to reach out to professionals, practicing professionals in the area that you admire. Maybe start off a project or something small that doesn't take too much of your, I mean, you're free, they're free. If you give, both of you give your time, it could be something that, and I strongly believe that funding for these things always falls into place if your initiative and your focus is fairly grounded. So I think that would be a start.
That's really insightful, because you're right. Not a lot of performing artists or artists look into the whole documentation space, and they also get so busy with creating that there's no time to actually even document.
And that's the irony, is that when a new dancer or a creative professional wants to dip into starting something new, one of the first places they start are spaces like this. Is there an archive where I can look at Marathi theatre? Is there an archive where I can look at, say, puppets in my area? And then you're like, you go to the local museum who's too busy doing their daily lecture, something like that.
Right.
So we just don't have those kind of spaces. It applies not just to the arts, but I would imagine everything. Yeah.
That's really insightful, and I hope that a lot of these points have helped everyone, all our listeners. And on that note, Deepthi, I'd like to thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, it went by so quick.
Yeah, I also didn't realize. Just looked at the time, and it's half an hour, and you just covered a few points. But some really, really important points that I'm sure a lot of us would want to go and work on. And we are also working with a lot of artists, but don't really look at archiving or documenting to this point, and maybe really going deep into that space.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always said, just for me and my colleagues, anyone, we're all sort of floating around on various Facebook pages and IG page. So please just send us a question and we'll set you on your way. So I'm hoping that let's start.
Yeah, please follow the page, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to Deepthi. And thank you again, and so happy to have you on.
Thank you to Shreya as well. Thank you to your entire team.
So glad to be collaborating with you. So we have more, for the audiences, we have more videos coming up and more conversations coming for this week. So do check out our page and stay connected. Send us any questions or suggestions you have, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Take care,
bye.
Bye. Bye.
Take care.